I'll say one thing about this video. Researching it was terrible for my TVR. How am I going to read all of these books before the 1st of August when the Booker Prize announces the long list of 12, or much more likely 13 books? Other key dates you'll need to know about are the 21st of September, when they will narrow the shortlist down to 6 books, and the 26th of November when they will announce the winner. What are the rules for the Booker? All of the books must be originally written in English. The Booker run a whole separate prize for translated literature. All books must be long-form fiction. That is, not short stories, not memoirs, not non-fiction. And they must be released in the UK between the 1st of October 2022 and the 30th of September 2023, which means statistically we're likely to get 2 books that haven't been released yet. And I think most bookish fans would like to see this changed, but you can lead a horse to water. You can't have meaningful action on climate change while there are still coal and oil companies donating millions of dollars to our political leaders. That's how the cliche goes, right? The books are selected by a panel of 5 judges, and this year I'm going to do my predictions a little bit different. I'm going to start by looking at the judges, seeing what we know about their bookish tastes, who they are, and seeing if we can get a general idea of what kind of books the judges will favour. Once I discuss the judges, I'm going to hit you with my 13 books. But before I do that, this is a gentle reminder. If you want Booker Prize content, if you want reviews of the newest released books, please hit that subscribe button. Every time somebody hits that subscribe button, a little piece of dopamine is released in my brain. S.A. Adujan is the head of the judges, and she is probably best known for her Booker shortlisted novel, Washington Black. Now, she has previously nominated 5 books as the most influential books on her. They are Beloved by Toni Morrison, Middlemarch by George Eliot, In the Free State by V.S. Naipaul, Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy, and Let the Great World Spin by Colin McCann. I'm really getting from this that she likes difficult topics and rich writing. Washington Black was a historical fiction about the life of a slave who is granted his freedom, and it covers a lot of difficult topics too, but there is also hope in that narrative, so we might get books along those lines. Robert Webb is an actor best known as the stupid-looking guy standing next to David Mitchell, making him look smart and pompous at the same time, and generally ruining his credibility. He lists his most influential books as Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Emma, and 1984. His favourite book is Waterland, a 1983 novel by Graham Swift, a work of postmodern literature spanning 240 years of history in one place. Adjo Ando is an actor who has worked for the Royal Shakespeare Company and is on TV shows such as EastEnder, Doctor Who, and Bridgerton, and she has voice acted in over 200 audiobooks, including Matrix by Lauren Groff, Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and The Girl with the Louding Voice. Of the 219 books she has worked on, there is such amazing variety. I definitely get the feeling that she is somebody who just loves books. Not a specific style of books, but all books. She lists her favourite books as Plainsong by Kent Harf, Beloved by Toni Morrison, and The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. She has also spoken of her love of classic adventure stories. Mary Jean Chang is a poet whose debut poetry collection won the Costa Prize Poetry Division in 2019. Chan is also a lecturer in creative writing, and I've not been able to find out much about their bookish tastes, but I have found their page at the university in which they lecture, and they research post-colonial literature, queer theory, critical race theory, and contemporary poetry. They are interested in hybrid poetry. James Shapiro is a Shakespeare scholar who specialises in the early modern period. He works with Columbia University and has had 10 works of non-fiction published, mostly on the topic of Shakespeare. Earlier this year, he won the Baillie Gifford's Winner of Winner Prize for his 2006 work 1599, A Year in the Life of William Shakespeare. Other than Shakespeare, his research interests are drama, theatre, poetry, and Renaissance and early modern European history. That's the judges. Let's see if we can find some books that meet those tastes. And the first thing that I want to look at is that I can see two of the judges love Shakespeare. And this has immediately made me think of Birnam Wood, the name which is a Macbeth reference. It's also my current read, and it's one hell of a strong book. The author, Eleanor Catton, won the Booker Prize for her last novel, The Luminaries. We know that previous winners get nominated for the prize again, so we know this book will be in front of the judges. While the Shakespeare link is a little bit tenuous, it does contain fabulous storytelling. It really does have the feel of, well, a classic adventure novel. I haven't finished it yet, but maybe the ending is also going to be reminiscent of a Shakespearean tragedy. It does have that sort of feel to it. It is a book about a guerrilla gardening group receiving funding from a billionaire and the ethical concerns that creates. There's thought-provoking prose about the direction the world is heading in, conservation and neoliberalism, the idealistic nature of the left, can we trust billionaires, what is the risk of journalism? I think that this is just one of the safer picks to be on the long list, to be honest. There are over 150 books nominated, so nothing is certain, but I think that Birnam Wood would probably raise more eyebrows if it didn't make the long list than if it did. Moving on to my second prediction. Robert Webb's favourite book is about the history of a place over a long period of time. And that to me screams Bourneville by Jonathan Coe. Now, to be honest, I don't think the rest of that novel is comparable to Webb's favourite novel. But I do think it does have a conversation about racism, which might also appeal to Mary Jean Chan. It's a sprawling intergenerational novel about a family living near a chocolate factory in the middle of England. We see snippets of the family's life at various points in England's recent history. The novel itself spans 75 years and the family becomes a representation for the country. We see a variety of different people and a variety of different opinions within the family, which really represents why politics is so important to the relationships and the friendships and the families that we have. How politics is wrapped up in the personal. The first book that I haven't read already that I'm going to predict is The East Indian by Brinda Chari. This is a historical fiction set in the 1600s about the first Indian in the New World, hence the East Indian. Tony is born on the coast of India where the English trade, and he is orphaned, and as a teenager he finds his way to London where he is kidnapped and eventually taken to the New World. Under a sadistic plantation owner, he forms a friendship with a young boy and hatches a plan to become a physician. There is so much potential for this novel to discuss hard issues such as the roots of racism and skin colour, and it really reminds me of Washington Black. This promises to be a brutal and a tough read, and those tough discussions about race, which I think will definitely be in this novel, that's another novel that I think Mary Jean Chan will like. Also, this is the time period that I think James Shapiro will be most interested in too. Moving on to book 4, and it's In Memoriam by Alice Wynne. If you ask me to pick a book right now that is going to win the Booker Prize, I'm going to tell you In Memoriam. Having read that book, it feels like a prize winner. It is a novel whose execution is so much better than its description. Set during World War I, it follows two boys at a boarding school who eventually apply to and join the army and fight in the First World War. Wynne's writing is rich, her crafting is magnificent, the comparison of the structure of an English public school to the army, how the mindless brutality of schoolboys gruesomely translates into the soldiers, the cutting wit and the coldness that shape these young men's personalities once they've witnessed death is so brutally done. There is a gay love story in this novel, and the symbolism and the comparison in Wynne's writing is first class. I know a lot of you will be thinking, I've read my fair share of World War novels, and I get it. They're common. They're a little bit everywhere, but this is so good. You will gain something from reading this, I promise you. I can see a comparison in the brutality of this novel to somebody like Toni Morrison or Cormac McCartney, yet it's very complex and very structurally brilliant. Not saying that those authors weren't. In fact, they definitely were. This is a real masterpiece of a novel that is announcing a new literary superstar. Mark my words, Wynne is going to win this award. That's a terrible pun. Moving on quickly, I get the feeling that historical fiction is going to be popular this year. I feel like all the judges might enjoy that sort of literature, and we also have two strong black women who like Toni Morrison and a non-binary human who studies post-colonial literature. And we have a new book from Zadie Smith about the Victorian relationship between Britain and Jamaica. The Fraud is my fifth book. This one is not coming out until the 5th of September, so this one will upset people wanting to get to the long list ASAP. Andrew Bogle grew up enslaved farming sugar. He understands how easily people are manipulated, and he is somehow the star witness of a trial of a lower class Australian butcher who claims to be the heir to a fortune. Eliza Torchett is the housekeeper and cousin of author William Ainsworth. She is interested in class, in slavery, in justice, in literature, and she thinks her cousin's friend Charles Dickens is a bully, and England is something where nothing is quite what it seems. I have no idea what these two stories have to do with each other, but I'm very interested to find out. Book number 6 is The New Life by Tom Crew. As I said, I'm getting historical fiction vibes. We also have a genderqueer judge who is interested in queer theory and a bisexual judge. It really wouldn't be surprised to see a massive LGBT novel in the list, and this is a fantastic novel. In 1894 Victorian London, Oscar Wilde's trial is raging on in the background, and two men, one gay, one married to a gay woman with his own desires, decide to write a book about inverts, the term used at the time for homosexuals. Both men are married, and there is a very messy, complex relationship we're built in this story. One of the things that is examined that I really like in this novel is who gets hurt when homosexuality is a crime. As we get closer to this book being published, Wilde's case creates more backlash against inverts, and the book becomes increasingly risky and acts as a catalyst. I just think this is a brilliant novel. Book number 7 is Cuddy by Benjamin Myers. This is a book I was pondering for this video, and as I was sort of reading the description and figuring out whether it would make it or not, I saw the word poetry. This is labelled as both fiction and poetry. Now, I'm not exactly sure why. I've never read a Benjamin Myers before. I've not read this book, but I imagine that either the writing is incredibly poetic, that we've got some sort of prose poetry going on, or that we have bits of poetry interspersed in this novel. Either way, we have a poet on our judging committee who loves experimental and hybrid poetry. This sounds like their thing. Cuddy is a shortening of Cuthbert, and this is a story about St. Cuthbert and about various people who were influenced by his life. And as a little side note, I note Benjamin Meyer is from Durham, and of course Durham is the home of St. Cuthbert, also the home of Bede. Interconnected stories all revolving around St. Cuthbert in some way. All the reviews I can see of this just mention how beautiful the writing is. Book number 8, and I'm going to go and have a look at that tenuous Shakespeare link again. Enter Ghosts by Isabel Hamad. Another book I haven't read, but Sonia is an actress who returns to the West Bank and takes a role in Hamlet, the best of all Shakespeare's work. That is not in the description, but it's a fact that all sensible bookish people agree on. This is Sonia's first trip back since the death of her grandparents, and she is visiting her sister when she meets a director who asks her to join their play of Hamlet. And they plan to bring this play to both sides of the wall, to old Palestine. I'm not sure if this book is going to be about the Palestinian people or about the ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestine, but it does really give the impression of a people-first narrative. And whatever your opinion is about this conflict, I think we can all agree when it comes to these sort of things, when it comes to war and that sort of nastiness, everyday people are the losers, and they require the most compassion from the people in charge, and they very rarely get it. This book has a lot of things I think the judges are going to like. It sounds hard-hitting and political. I can really see this being dark, and I can see Hamlet being all through this novel. I can see the conflict between Israel and Palestine and the Shakespearean play being reflected on one another, and I think that has the potential to be brilliant. We usually see one of the books longlisted for the Woman's Prize, also longlisted for the Booker Prize. I think the obvious choice is Demon Copperhead, but with all the fanfare it has received, I think the judges might leave that one alone alone. And there is another book on the Women's Prize long list that is eligible for the Booker that just feels more like a Booker book than it does a Women's Prize book. Book number 9 on my list is Wandering Souls. This is the story of a family of Vietnamese refugees who are split into two groups to make their way to safety. This ends up being a tragic story of migration, racism, fitting in, leaving your family behind, the blending of cultures, betrayal and trust, and so much more. It blends Thatcher politics into the story of this family. Cecile Pin is a wonderfully talented debut author who is the type of author we often see in these prizes, and I think this book is really complementary to the other prizes in this list. I think it rounds it out very well. I have to be honest, I'm getting to the point where I've realized that there are more books I wanted to include in this video than the 13 that I am allowed. And I think the judges are going to have that problem too. And I'd like to say spare a thought for them, but stick me in a room with 150 new release books and only 4 extremely bookish people to discuss them with. How hard must their life be? Book number 10 is The Covenant of Water by Abraham Verghese. Every Booker Prize needs a chunker, and at almost 800 pages, this is a chunker. Spanning 77 years and starting in the year 1900, we follow a family in Kerala in the south of India. Every generation of this family, one member dies of drowning. And I guess that explains the title. We start with a 12-year-old girl still grieving the death of her father, being sent by boat to her wedding with a 40-year-old man. Gross. And I believe we're following her life as she transitions from child bride into the family matriarch. This is another one I've not read, but it has received great reviews. And I think a book which demonstrates the changing nature of society over a period of time is popular and is something that the judges will like, as I've previously said with Bourneville. On to book 11, and I've had a big gay book. It's time for a big lesbian book, Neon Roses by Rachel Dawson. One of my favourite historical stories that I learned about recently was the LGBT's community support for the miners striking during Thatcher era Britain. It's such an unlikely coming together against a common enemy, and it just makes me feel good seeing people help each other. So tell me that story and stick a lesbian love story in the middle of it. What is even better is that our protagonist begins the story in a heterosexual relationship when she meets the love interest of this book. So we have a bisexual coming out. We've got activism, we have poverty, we have Thatcher, who is a fantastic pantomime villain, less fantastic actual real life person, but you know, she's a good Prince John. And we have 99 Red Balloons. Set in Cardiff, Manchester and London. I've not read this, but I really want to. This sounds like it could be so good in so many different ways. And I just have to read this little section out of the author's bio. She was born in Swansea and has done a variety of jobs, including selling sausage rolls and vibrators, not at the same time. On to book 12, and I have not included an Irish novel yet, and it would be unusual for the Booker judges to exclude Ireland altogether. And to give you a little preview, book 13, also an Irish novel. Both these books are about hard-hitting political issues, and I can see the judges really getting behind them. Close to Home, Michael McGee. Sean grew up in Belfast, worked hard, studied hard, went to uni, and when Sean returned home from uni and find things are the same and there are no jobs for him and his degree is worthless, he gets into a fight with a stranger and everything begins to come undone. A portrait of working class Ireland in the shadows of the Troubles. Again, this is one I haven't read, but it sounds like we're to be touching on male depression and hopelessness and the trappings of society of loss and trauma and the struggle to break free from a cycle of oppression. And I think racism in Ireland is a really interesting subject too. I'm not sure if this book tackles it, but I think a lot of the racism that we read about, 99.9%, of it is about skin colour, and with really good reason. But I often think the historical and the current treatment of the Irish by the English powers is fascinating in that racist sense. And I think I could say the same thing about Scotland, Wales, or the north of England. But I think this is especially interesting in Northern Ireland with the history of the Troubles and where they are at now. Regardless of if that is included, I think a novel about depression, violence and hopelessness is really worthwhile reading and a worthy inclusion on the Booker long list. Book 13, and the last novel I'm predicting, is Soldier Sailor by Claire Kilroy. I've not read this one either, but all I'm going to say is a new mother is writing her suicide note. You either definitely want to read that now or you definitely do not. I don't need to say anything more about it. There were so many amazing sounding books I didn't include in this video because of space, really. So I might do another video where I discuss the more interesting sounding and lesser known books eligible for this year's Booker Prize, just so we can discuss some of the weird and wonderful books out there. Let me know your thoughts on the Booker this year in the comments section, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more Booker content. Bye bye.